All right. How can you have a cheat meal, or as I like to call it, more of a treat meal, and still achieve a weight loss goal? That was a really big thing that we talked about in the last live stream. So I'm going to be diving into that today on the 4 different rules on what you can do to still achieve your weight loss goals while incorporating a cheat day, or what I like to call them, treat meals. So hello, good morning. I already see David in the chat. Good morning, Karen. Good morning, Caroline from Rhode Island. Hello. So if you guys don't know who I am, my name's Autumn, and I'm a certified clinical nutritionist with my master's in nutrition human performance. And today we are going to be talking about the cheat day rules on how you can still achieve a weight loss goal while using cheat days or treat meals. So if you guys tuned in last time, you heard that I talked a lot about this. This was a big topic during the last live stream on just weight loss plateaus, what people might be doing. And something that really I think struck a chord with a lot of people is that you're maybe incorporating treat days instead of treat meals. So that a bit, but I also just wanted to make sure that we can go over actual structure and what you can do for best results when you are incorporating these treat meals, but still be able to eat what you want, but still work toward those goals. This is actually pulled. Here, let me get over to here. This is actually pulled directly from the 6-week summer meal plan. So there's only 1 week left for this. So if you guys were looking to get this and grab it before it's gone, there is literally 1 week left before it's gone. So if you guys want to check that out, I have it linked down description below and you guys can check that out. This is the 6-week summer meal plan, what everyone's been following during the summer intermittent fasting challenge over the last 5 weeks, and during this next week as well, has 6 weeks of meal by meal planning, brand new recipes, as well as it has the treat meal approach. You can see it featured in the back there. Here, I can actually make that a little bigger. You can see it featured in the back there as well. So there's the PMS approach, as well as just a lot of additional information to help you achieve your goals. So this is pulled directly from there, and let's jump straight into the featured content. So the first rule that's really, really important when it comes to achieving a weight loss goal while still using this cheat meal structure, treat meal structure, is to make sure that it's actually scheduled. So there's actually research done around this topic, and I've shared it in a couple of videos in the past, especially some of my earlier videos, on how there was a study where they actually had people who were looking to achieve a weight loss goal incorporate one scheduled treat a week, and it was one meal a week, and another group that didn't. And the 2 groups still lost the same amount of weight. So this can actually be a good strategy to use to make sure that you are able to incorporate the foods that you maybe have more of an emotional attachment to, a cultural attachment to, but something that's not going to serve your goals as well. Strategically adding it in and scheduling it in has actually been studied to show to work. So a big thing to do is to make sure that it is scheduled. This ensures that you can actually have it be something that you love, you enjoy, something that will make your soul happy. One thing that is really important when it comes to this, to make sure that you're able to achieve your goals, is that it truly is scheduled. Because the thing that can happen with these treat meals or cheat meals, if it's not done the right way, is that they aren't scheduled and that they are more spontaneous. When this happens, it's easy to start making the treat meal more of a habit and something that happens more consistently than you had initially planned. This is where perhaps you could have like a stressful day, and instead of creating habits around other types of strategies that de-stress you, that don't involve relying on a food that's not going to support your wellness goals, it's easy to fall into those habits of then relying on food instead. It can become more of an emotional crutch if it isn't something that's scheduled. So we do want to make sure that it doesn't become, these treats are something that you can actually enjoy, and it doesn't just become a dopamine hit on those stressful days. So with that in mind, another good just mini rule that we had talked about last time is to make sure that it is a true meal, not a day. This is kind of a subcategory within this schedule to make sure that it's actually scheduled. Because if it's a full day, if you're having your first meal as donuts, your second meal as a big thing of pasta, your third meal as a big thing of pizza, those are huge amounts of blood glucose spikes, huge amounts of the storing hormone insulin that's being secreted. And if you're having that all throughout the day, you're more likely to crave that even more the next day. And I think we've all been in this situation where maybe you did have more of this quote treat day. And then the next day you end up having another treat day because those cravings are so strong from having multiple of those quote treat meals. So just making sure that it's actually scheduled and that it is preferably one meal, which we will get more into in a bit as well. Which, by the way, guys, if you have questions, make sure you throw them in the chat and make sure that you are putting the question marks before and after. It makes it easier for me to sort through and find them. Good morning, Skills Many. Hello. Good morning, Jeanette. All right, thanks guys for tuning in. Watching this whilst eating pizza. Well, is it scheduled? Okay, so moving on to the next really important tip here, and it's to plan it for later in the day. So we already talked about the importance of scheduling that treat meal, but the other important factor is preferably having it later in the day. So you can see I've listed a few reasons on why this is, so let me make it bigger, why this is something that can be so useful. First things first is because if you do have just one treat meal and you're scheduling it late in the earlier part of the day to have those spikes and falls in blood. Oh, okay, we're good. You're not going to have as much time for those spikes and falls in blood glucose, which means that you're not going to crave more food throughout the day. So if you, just to give you on the flip side, if you had a treat meal that was in the morning, like if you had, like, let's say that donut, or you went out for a brunch and you had something first thing in the morning, your blood glucose levels are going to be on more of a wild ride earlier in the day, which means that you're going to get a crash in your blood glucose levels earlier in the day. And that crash makes your body need something instantly. You need something right away to help bring that blood glucose level back up, which is why you find that if you have something like a donut or something very sugary early in the day, you're more likely to crave those foods all throughout, and then you're therefore more likely to have those foods all throughout. So having that treat late in the day, so as your dinner or your dessert, that makes it so that you're less likely to have those spikes and falls throughout the day, limit the amount of time to just later in the day that can happen. So therefore that reduces the risk of further cravings, and it's easier to bounce back faster the next day as a result. So you don't necessarily have to have it later in the day, but I have seen that this is just one way that can really help to make it easier to stick with your wellness goals and your weight loss progress, is by having that treat later in the day. Let me see if there's anything else I wanted to say on that, guys. You guys know me. I have my set of just what I'm going to say so that I don't go off track too much. Okay, so one additional thing I put on here as well is that if you are, I get a lot of questions on how many treats you can have. Like, can you have both dinner or dessert? Is that possible? This really comes down to your own carbohydrate sensitivity. I have found for some people that you can still have 2 treats and still achieve a weight loss goal. If that's the case, then you likely are more carbohydrate or less carbohydrate sensitive, where your body isn't as responsive to carbohydrates. You're able to not have as big of a spike in the storing hormone insulin in response to carbohydrates. And likely, if that's the case, you are more insulin sensitive. So if you're more insulin sensitive, you can probably get away with being a little bit more flexible with your treat meal structure and having both a dessert as well as a dinner that's going to be more a treat. But if you are already, if you know you're insulin resistant, if you know you're carbohydrate sensitive, I would really recommend sticking to one. So choosing either dinner or dessert, just so you can actually start achieving your goals and start feeling good again. You can always increase it if you find that you can be a little bit more flexible with yourself, but I've just found if you are more insulin resistant, that it is a good idea to make sure that you are sticking with just one. And if you find that even just sticking to one treat meal isn't working for you, you're not achieving your goals, you can always just remove it for the time being until your body becomes more insulin sensitive. So, we talked a lot more about this idea of insulin sensitivity in 2 live streams ago, I believe. So if you missed that one, definitely go check it out so you can get an idea of how insulin sensitive or carbohydrate sensitive you might be. But that would just be a good thing to keep in mind, is that if you already know you have some level of insulin resistance, you probably want to just keep it to one meal or remove it for the time being. All right. Good morning from East Africa. Hello. Okay, so here's a good question. Remember, guys, put 4 question marks before and after. It makes it really easy. So just like what Tori did here. Actually, Tori did 6 question marks, so you're really on top of it. I'm a big sauce person, especially ketchup. Are there any sauces that you recommend that aren't high in sugar? So one, I'm not affiliated with them at all, but one really great company that has 0 sugar or very low sugar sauce alternatives is Primal Kitchens. They generally have it at Whole Foods, or you could even get it on Amazon or online. They have things like ketchup that's 0 sugar. So if you do like sauces like ketchup or aiolis and you want to make sure that that doesn't have to count as sugar component of your meal, then I would check out companies that are going to be 0 sugar like Primal Kitchens. They're a really great one. Yes, Lori, I'm aware of that, working on it. We got the tech going on one side. Now we have to figure out the other, but it is something we're working on. Kelly is asking what's my go-to treat meal, how often I have it. That is something I talked a bit in the 4th meal on how frequently I have it, but just since Kelly's bringing it up here, I don't have a treat meal as frequently as I used to. I used to have it more frequently in the earlier parts of my whole health journey. I found that I needed it more frequently back then, but now I don't crave it as often. So I have it maybe about once a week, maybe a little less frequently than that. And usually it's Mexican food just because I grew up in Southern California. I think that's like a must. Yes. So Katie says, yes, love Primal Kitchen. Yep. It's definitely a great one to use for low sugar options. Yeah, Veronica said as well, I use Primal Kitchen. It's awesome. Again, not affiliated with them. They just do have really great products for low sugar or 0 sugar options. All right. So now let's go on to this 3rd tip here. And this is really more specifically about the treat meal itself, like what you can do when that treat meal comes around to even make the treat meal more optimized. And this is to make sure that you have your protein first. And to really just make sure you have a protein along with your treat meal, because I think this is one area that people forget. They just have whatever they want at their treat and just treat it as a treat. However, this is going to make you feel not very full and satisfied. You're likely going to crave dessert after if your treat is your dinner, and it'll obviously be harder to bounce back the next day. When you eat protein alongside your treat, so we'll get into some specific examples here as well. But when you eat protein alongside your treat, it helps to activate that satiety hormone peptide YY. And if you can get some of that satiety hormone going and get some level of satiety up, you can still eat some of that treat, but you won't need as much of it to be satisfied. So it's kind of like a little treat meal hack that I found works really well for myself, for my clients. Again, this is something that's directly in the new 6-week summer meal plan. It's a really great strategy. But to make sure that you have some type of protein first so that you can still get that treat, you can still have it and enjoy it, but you don't need as much of it in order to be satisfied from that meal. So you just get less of that blood glucose spike, you get less of that insulin spike because you don't need as much of it because you were satiated. So satiety is a really important factor to make sure that you can incorporate this treat while still enjoying it, but not needing to have or not requiring to have as much of it. So just to give an example, like if you were, I was just talking to a client about this over on Friday. If you were to go to a pizza restaurant where it's very hard to get a significant amount of protein on top of your pizza, if you were to go to a pizza restaurant, one really easy strategy is to get an appetizer first of something like a side of meatballs or a side of wings. Those two are going to be packed with a significant amount of protein. And if you can eat that appetizer first before having that pizza, then you're going to go into that pizza already being pretty satiated and not needing to eat the entire pizza, but have 1 or 2 slices and feel satisfied. So that's definitely a good strategy to make sure that you can still have your treat, but be satisfied faster from it. Oops. Don't forget to like the video. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, guys, if you could like the video, it really helps spread the word. I'm really bad at mentioning that because I'm so focused on just helping you guys. But it really helps spread the word if you can like this video, share it with anyone who you think might need this or might benefit from it. Thank you so much. Hello from Canada. Hello. Yeah, so, okay, Becca said, notice this tip, especially with burgers and fries. Yeah, so this is a good point, is that you can see how you're way more satiated when you have something like a burger versus when you have something like pizza. Good note there, Becca. This is a great question. So Angela's asking, do we treat alcohol like dry wine or vodka, tequila, soda as a treat meal, or how do we go about alcohol consumption? First of all, I would say, again, this depends on your level of insulin resistance, but putting that to the side, because I don't want to go over that too much since that was a topic from a previous live stream. But assuming that you maybe aren't super insulin resistant, if you're having something like dry wine, especially if you're having dry farm wine where it has zero sugar, I'm a big fan of dry farm wine. If you're having something like dry farm wine where it doesn't have any sugar, you can be a little bit more flexible with that because it's not going to have as big of an effect on insulin or as big of an effect on the blood glucose levels because there's no sugar involved. However, if you're having an alcoholic drink that does have sugar, then I would consider that to be more of a treat. So if you're having like a cocktail, for example, that has added sugar and that has simple syrup involved, then I would consider that as part of a treat because it is a very simple form of sugar that your body easily can absorb, easily can get that blood glucose spike and then get that dip as a result. It just essentially is being treated the same way as having any type of dessert if there's sugar involved within the drink. So that's a really great question. So just to recap, it depends on the type of alcohol. If it's a pure dry wine, then that won't have sugar involved, and that's relatively fine depending on your alcohol tolerance. But if it does have any sugar, that's something that you want to make sure is considered a treat. Oh, thank you, Karen. I wish I could like the video a million times. Maybe if we just keep clicking it and see what happens. I'm just kidding. Oh, great. So Jody says, hi from Germany. Thanks for the tips last week. I start meals with protein now. That's something. If you guys missed last week's live stream, we went over some really great, like sneaky little weight loss tips that you guys can incorporate that a lot of people don't really realize can make a big difference. That was a big one first. Oops. Veronica's asking, is red wine better than white? Not necessarily. It really just depends on the sugar content and how that wine is made. So if it's fully fermented and whether or not there's sugar that's added back in. So it really just depends on how it's made. And unfortunately in America, you don't have to list how much sugar is added into wine. So that's just something to be aware of. Raphael, I love this channel. Thank you. Okay, so let me see if there's anything else I want to say about the protein. If anyone has done this tip, by the way, because I've talked about it a few times, having the protein first. I know there's some of my clients in the chat as well. So if you guys can list an example of what you've done to have a protein first, that'd be really great. And I'll put it on here to give people more ideas. So please talk about a cheat week. We're going to Oahu. I do have, I have a really great video on what to do when you're traveling. I have a couple of videos on what to do if you're traveling. If you just type Autumn Bates travel, I would definitely recommend you check that out because travel is a little different. Maybe that's another live stream that we can do in the future. I wanted to talk more about just the cheat day, cheat meal, so we can get more into that. But definitely check those videos out if you haven't seen them. Just type Autumn Bates vacation and it'll pop right up. All right. Ooh, Oahu. I know. I want to go. Okay. Let me go into this next one here. Remember, guys, if you have questions, just put the 4 question marks before and after so it's easier for me to find. Okay, so this 4th tip here is really important and it's frequency matters. So anyone who joined in last week knows this is a big important tip. And this is kind of what inspired today's live stream because it seemed like this hit home for a lot of people. But the frequency really does matter on how often you're going to be incorporating these treats. I think that we, because it's got so common to be eating so much sugar throughout the day, in America especially, we assume that, eating a treat 4 times per week or after dinner at night, having a dessert, we assume that's something that can be okay and still achieve a weight loss goal. But from what I've seen with clients, from what I've seen with working with those one-on-one, with myself, with the AM peeps, this is really important to remember, and it's that we really need to have it be more of an actual treat to the week as well. So this is where we go back to that first tip on scheduling it, making sure that it's a time, 1 to 2 days during the week at most, especially if you are on your weight loss journey and if you haven't broken through a plateau. 1 to 2 times at most is what I found is a good way to approach the treat meals. And this is talking about meals. So 1 to 2 meals, not 1 to 2 days. Remember that. Cheat meals, not days. And I hate using that word because I don't like its association. I like to use the term treat, and that you are having a treat for yourself for the week and not necessarily a cheat. And that since it is scheduled, it is a true treat. So with this, remember we talked about if you haven't broken through a plateau, if you are down to the 2 treats and now maybe the 1 treat, you might be too insulin resistant at this point to incorporate some type of treat. So this is where you can temporarily remove the treat and then reincorporate it back in, or test reincorporating it back in once you've started to achieve your weight loss goal and see if your body is now able to handle that level of sugar or carbohydrates while still achieving that weight loss goal. But it really, the frequency of how often you can incorporate a treat comes down to how insulin sensitive you are. If you're more insulin sensitive, then you can be a little bit more flexible with yourself. If you're less insulin sensitive, if you're more insulin resistant, then you likely either need to have only 1 or maybe 0 for the time being until you get that back down. There are tests. I know a lot of people ask a lot of questions about how you can actually test for insulin resistance. Really good one. You can just go to your doctor. Unfortunately, there's no good at-home test that you can do. You do need to go through your doctor or through a lab to get that done. So a fasting insulin test is a good way to get an idea of it. And it's probably the easiest one, although you can go through your doctor and see if there's other alternatives that you can do as well. Let me see if there's something else I wanted to say on that. Oh yeah, okay. So this is also something important to keep in mind, because this is something I've seen happen with a lot of my clients. You just because you have a treat scheduled, if you aren't craving it, it doesn't mean you have to have it. Oh, okay, we're back. They're working on, sorry guys, they're working on Wi-Fi right in front of our house, so it's been a little spotty today. Hopefully you guys can see me okay. Okay, so if you have a treat scheduled, but you don't feel like it, if you really want to have the meal that is more supportive of your goals, you actually crave that instead, you don't have to have a quote treat. And in fact, I've even talked a lot about how you can go to various restaurants and still make a really amazing meal that's perfectly in line with your goals. So if you have a treat scheduled, but if you don't want a treat, then you can still go out to eat and still have a meal that's supportive of your goals. So if you go back to, I think it was 3 live streams ago, I did a whole live stream on what you can eat, what you can do when you go out to eat, and how you can pretty much at every single restaurant structure a meal to be supportive of your goals. So if you missed that one, definitely go and check it out. It's a lot of really great, useful information. Okay, let me see. So guys, put your questions in I'm going to go through and answer some questions along here. But in the meantime, the question I have for you guys, what's your favorite treat meal? So what is it that you guys, if you were to have a treat, what would you generally have? I mentioned for me, it's usually going to be Mexican food, like going out and having chips and guacamole. And, you know, I just love chips and guacamole. So that's usually going to be mine. But what's your guys' go-to treat meal for the weekend that you really enjoy? Or when is your scheduled treat? When do you guys generally have your treat scheduled? Is it the weekend? I know some of my clients, they have client meetings with other people where they do have to be a little bit more flexible with themselves during the week. So they actually have their treat scheduled during the week. So, you know, curious on what you guys have to say. Kebab with fries. Yeah, that's definitely a good one. That actually, you can see there, you have, with the kebab, you have your protein, and then you also still have the fries, which is something that is obviously going to spike your insulin a bit more. So that's a really great one. Good combo. Okay, here's a really great question. So Christina is asking, can you be insulin resistant without being diabetic? Yes, you can. In fact, you can be insulin resistant for many years, if not decades, before you experience any type of diabetes. So insulin resistance is just where your insulin is being less able to control the blood glucose levels with less amount of insulin. That's not a really great way to describe it. But basically your insulin is still able to keep your blood glucose under control even when you're insulin resistant. When you go into diabetes, insulin is now completely unable to control the blood glucose levels. So you have the high insulin and high blood glucose levels. So you can definitely be insulin resistant without being diabetic. And in fact, if you have a history of PCOS or polycystic ovarian syndrome, you likely have a degree of insulin resistance because those are really strongly tied together. In fact, it's just something that usually you can help predict diabetes. I think one researcher said about 10 years in advance by looking at insulin resistance and what your fasting insulin levels are. So it's one that I personally think more doctors should do just as a baseline so you can understand it before it becomes a problem. But yeah, it is something that you can have insulin resistance without being diabetic. So really, really great question. Spencer says pizza. That used to be my favorite as well. I studied abroad in Italy and they had really great pizzas there. So that used to be my go-to, but just go back to my roots, my Southern California roots. Okay, so Sue says Saturday, and I like to have cauliflower pizza. Depending on how that cauliflower pizza is made, it could be considered a treat or not. If it's just pure cauliflower, maybe made with a little bit of almond flour, there's nothing really insulin spiking there. But if it's cauliflower, like a pre-made cauliflower pizza, often they have something like cassava flour inside or tapioca starch, which is a really refined type of starch as well that can really greatly spike insulin too. So depending on how that cauliflower pizza is made, if you make it yourself even, then it could still not be considered a treat. But that sounds delicious. Katie, wine and bread. Katie owns a vineyard, so that's understandable. Okay, this is a little off topic, but Hanar is asking, is oatmeal okay to eat for dinner? Oatmeal is going to be something that is less satiating. So it depends on how you're eating it and how insulin sensitive or resistant you are. If you are more insulin resistant, that's something that I would recommend swapping that for a less insulin spiking type of food. But if you are not insulin resistant, and if you perhaps are at a good, you aren't looking to achieve more weight loss, and if you actually pair that oatmeal with some type of protein, because oatmeal doesn't have much protein in it, really any at all. So it's important to actually make it, when you make it an actual meal, to add in some type of protein, whether that be with Greek yogurt or with protein powder. Really, really important to actually add in so it's treated as a real meal. I personally don't consider a meal unless it does have some type of protein, because we need to be getting enough protein for our bodies every day. And especially as women, probably aren't getting enough already. That's why I did that one video on how to calculate your protein needs. It's actually in the new 6-week summer meal plan as well, where you can calculate your protein needs, because I've seen so many women are just not getting the protein they need for their body composition, to maintain hair, to create new cells. It's something that a lot of women are missing out on. So if you are having oatmeal, and if you are, and if it's working for you, just making sure that you at least are getting protein in there by adding in something like Greek yogurt or a protein powder. That'll be really important to treat it as an actual meal. Isabel's asking, is it good to fast for more than 3 days? So there's a therapeutic time and place for extended fasts. It's not something that I usually recommend to people, especially if they are looking to achieve a weight loss goal, because I've seen it used as a crutch, as a way to offset maybe some not so great eating previously. And that's where you can get that yo-yo dieting. You're not actually addressing your meals and the amount of protein that you need each day, or just the types of foods that are going to be more supportive of your goals if you are just always doing those 3-day fasts to help counter what you had done previously. I'm not saying that that's what you're doing, but I have seen that happen too many times, and I just don't want to have anyone develop those types of yo-yoing habits. I want you to be able to sustainably achieve your goals without having to experience that up and down. So as I mentioned, there is a time and a place, and you definitely can look into it with a doctor who's actually trained in some type of extended fast, especially if you're using some type of medication as well. Good question. Trip says ice cream. So big ice cream fan. I actually see a couple ice cream fans along here. Italian pizza is definitely different than our American pizza. I would have to agree. Maybe that's why I haven't been having it as much. So Dawn is asking, can you fix insulin resistance with healthy intermittent fasting? It's definitely something that is studied, that intermittent fasting, what intermittent fasting study just show it can do is decrease the frequency in which it's secreting insulin. And definitely a frequency really matters as well when it comes to insulin, and how often it's raised can make it so that insulin also can be a problem. Anecdotally, I've seen some really great results, but also definitely make sure that you get those tests done so you can actually see where you're at with your doctor. Kayla says pancakes. Oh, wait, there it goes. Oh, shoot. Here it comes. Kayla says pancakes. That's also a good one. You can also make healthy pancakes. A really great cottage cheese pancake. I know it sounds a little weird, but it's packed with protein. It's an amazing recipe, also in the new 6-week summer meal plan. Let me see if I understand this question. So per day, if you stay under 10 grams of sugar / sweeteners, is that okay? Or should you just have 0 sugars and sweeteners? It's really just seeing how your own body responds. I used to have a little bit more sweeteners that I would incorporate throughout my day, and I found that it was making me break out. So I personally, during the week, I cut out the added sweeteners completely, but that's what works best for me. So if you find that you can achieve your goals and you feel good by using about 10 grams of sugar, great. But if not, just know that sugar isn't something that's necessary. It's not something that you need to be having in order to achieve great health and wellness. So if you can get by without it, great. If you find that you can achieve your goals while staying at about 10 grams of sugar, fantastic. It's just finding how your own body is responding and what it is that you're comfortable with for having for your days. Yeah, so Renee says, now that I've started intermittent fasting, I don't really want a treat meal because I feel so good. That's one thing that I did mention with this last hit for the frequency matters tip or rule, is that if you don't feel like having a treat, you don't have to have it. Sometimes even though maybe I want to have something like chips and guac and I know that it's going to taste amazing, I also know that I want to feel really great the next day. Maybe I have some type of event plan the next day that I want to feel great for and I want to have stable energy levels for. And if that's the case, then I'll be like, I just don't really feel like having the chips and guac tonight, and I'll just pair that with something else. So it is about, you don't have to incorporate a treat if you aren't feeling like it, or if you prefer feeling better the next day instead. Also, knowing it's an option can be really great for helping you to maintain your weight loss and wellness goals, because you don't have to feel restricted. So it's a good way to have that balance. Great questions, guys. Oops. Okay, so I knew that was going to happen. Okay, so Donka says, is drinking protein drinks okay to get your protein in? If you mean the ready to drink ones, I usually recommend trying to use a protein shake as more of a smoothie. So having protein powder to go along with like the chia seeds or peanut butter or other high quality fats from a whole food source that also includes fiber. So it is treated like more of a true meal, but it's still something that you can bring with you on the go and make it really easy and simple. I'm just not a big fan of the pre-made protein drinks. I know that there are, for some people, it works out and it can be an option, especially if you are on the go. However, if it's a staple, I usually recommend having a smoothie instead, where you can have more control over the amounts of high quality fats and fibers that are going to be involved. That way you can make it a true meal rather than having more of that snacking behavior. Because again, I think it was at the last live stream that I talked about the importance of having meals, not snacks. And with a lot of these ready to drink protein drinks, they are pretty much just pure protein and maybe sugar in there. Some of them do have 0 sugar and high quality fats instead. Usually these are going to be like the keto protein drinks. But a lot of them have sugar, and a significant amount of sugar, which ultimately will get that spike in the storing hormone insulin and work against your weight loss goals and make it be that you're more likely to snack as a result, because you didn't get the fat to go along with it to stay satiated. So in terms of the ready to drink protein drinks, I'm not a big fan unless you can find one that does contain fat and no sugar, and have it on the occasion. Instead, I would recommend having more of the like the protein smoothies, where you can get more of the protein as well as the fat, as well as the fiber involved, to make it a meal. Great question. Okay, Cindy's asking, does the body handle protein from a clean powder form the same way it does protein from a meat or egg source? I've read conflicting information on that. First of all, it really depends on where the protein powder is coming from. So a lot of the studies actually done on protein are usually using protein powders, because they're usually doing it from an athlete perspective, and seeing how the person responds from like an egg-based protein powder versus a whey protein powder versus a soy protein powder. So most of the studies are going to be done on protein powders anyway. But even within that category, it really greatly varies how the body is going to process and use that protein too. So for example, egg is usually the one that's deemed the best, the one that's just the easiest to break down and assimilate into proteins, take those amino acids and actually make them into proteins within your body. Whey is another really high level one. And then one of the lowest ones is soy. Soy, even when you compare it to control groups, tends to have almost the same response as the control group. So I'm not a very big fan of soy-based protein powders. One of those reasons, that is one of those reasons. Multiple other reasons though as well. So it also just depends on where the protein's coming from. So not all protein powders are the same. I have a video that I think a live stream that I did earlier this year on proteins. That's a really good one where I go more into this idea of amino acid utilization. I know it sounds like a big word, but it's a pretty simple concept. So definitely check that out if you're looking at protein powders and the types of proteins you should be using. Okay, great question. So Monique says, what would you suggest for your smoothies as a person who hates dairy? I don't like yogurt. Can I try egg white protein powder instead? Absolutely. So like I mentioned, egg white protein powder is a really high quality protein powder that you can use. It's also generally going to be one of the cleaner ones, because you don't have to worry about it being contaminated by heavy metal rich soil, which is a huge concern with the plant-based protein powders. Again, I've talked a lot about the plant-based protein powders and the better ones versus the more contaminated ones in that previous video. But egg white protein powder is definitely a really great option that you can use for the smoothies. Really, all my smoothies, I usually give an option where you can swap out the Greek yogurt and use a combination of the plant-based yogurt, a zero sugar plant-based yogurt with protein powder if you want that same consistency. Or you can just use the regular like egg-based protein powder as well. But yeah, so you can swap out protein powder, or swap in protein powder rather, for Greek yogurt too. Great questions. Yeah, Katie has experienced this herself. Egg white protein dissolves easy and is really tasteless. So it's definitely a good one to use. Okay, I'm just scrolling through questions here. Guys, if you want to just put the question marks before and after. Terry's asking, hi from Atlanta. What are your thoughts on the new Keto Bars available wash hands? I have not seen these. However, if you are not new to my channel, you probably can predict my response here. I'm not a fan of bars because they are highly processed, highly refined types of ingredients. And I've found that more consistently than not, or actually pretty much in every single circumstance, when I have a client and they are relying on protein bars, as soon as we remove it and swap it in for a better alternative, even if it is a snack alternative, but a better alternative that's not as refined, that 9 out of 10 times they're able to break through a plateau. And that alone was what was holding them back. So I'm not a fan of bars. I have not seen this one, so I can't say specifically on what it is. However, I have not found a protein bar that I would back. So I have a live stream where I did talk about mini meals, or no, wait, it's in the new 6-week summer meal plan where I talk about the super fast lunch options. That would be a really great thing for you to check out, especially if you're using protein bars, because you are more busy and you don't have time to eat a full beautiful meal, or to make a meal even. So definitely check out that page within the 6-week summer meal plan. Remember, it is gone in a week. So you want to make sure you grab that before it's gone. I have the details listed down in the description below. Great questions. So BC76 is asking, how do you stay consistent after losing weight? Any pointers for consistency? This actually would be a really great live stream in itself to do more specifically on this topic, but definitely having those scheduled treats is one that has been at least studied as a great way to maintain progress. Also, always ensuring that you're still getting enough protein and getting enough of the fats. Because if you're not getting satiated at your meals, and if you're going to get hungry, you're more likely to want to reach for those foods that aren't as supportive for your goals, and that will get you back to reversing that progress. So really making sure that you're getting adequate amounts of protein, having those scheduled treat meals, those are two really great tools that you can use. But that might be a really great for next live stream, which this is the last live stream for the 6-week summer meal plan, which is nuts. I can't believe it. But we'll have more live streams for the next challenge, which will be announced maybe sooner than you think. Okay. So on Facebook, and I think if you guys just click the link in there, you can verify it so I can see your name. But I was thinking that it would be best to be really consistent to get insulin resistance under control. Then after months, try to lighten up for cheat meals infrequently. Is that a solid approach? I think what you're saying is having no treats, and then once you have your insulin resistance under control, then incorporating treat meals. I think that's what you're saying. If so, then yeah, that would probably be a good strategy, especially because I found that those who are more insulin resistant just are going to do better off with not incorporating treats in the beginning. So it's a good idea. Okay, here's a good question. Not saying that everyone else's wasn't, just here's another really great question. Maxwell is asking, can you talk briefly about natural sugar in fruit versus added sugar? So this can be a weird concept to wrap your head around. It was weird for me when I was first in school learning about this, but sugar in fruit and sugar that's more refined are the same sugars. They're still the same sugars. And even if you pull, like, let's say fruit juice, if you get like an apple and you squeeze that apple and you get the fruit juice, that's going to act pretty much the exact same way as if you were to have white sugar that you're adding into water and stirring in. Yes, you might get a little bit more antioxidants from the apple juice. However, it's still the same amount of sugar. Or if you, of course, make them the same amount, it's still going to be the same amount of sugar, having the same impact on your blood glucose levels. In fact, fruit sugar is usually going to be worse because it does have more fructose, which is the fruit sugar. And that has a really negative impact on our liver. And there's a lot of research around fructose, really interesting research around fructose and how it can really increase something called de novo lipogenesis, new fat creation, fatty liver. So there's a lot of negative associations around high amounts of fructose, even from whole natural fruits, especially if it's something that you're drinking it so you can drink a lot of it. The big difference between looking at something like whole fruit versus cane sugar, because cane sugar does still come from sugar cane, it still comes from a natural source. But when you look at those two different options, is that one is really refined and one isn't. And that can really affect how much sugar you're getting and the speed at which it's absorbed. So if you're having an apple versus just regular teaspoon of sugar, the teaspoon of sugar has nothing to slow it down. It's going to be quickly absorbed and you're going to get a faster rise in blood glucose and a faster rise in that storing hormone insulin. Whereas let's say eating that apple, even if it is the equivalent amount of sugar, let's say just keep this even, you have to chew it, which slows down how quickly you're able to even get that sugar into your system. You then have to digest it. You have to use enzyme. You have to use mechanical digestion within your stomach, and then you have to use enzymes within your small intestine to actually break those sugars down and then absorb them. So it really slows down the speed at which those sugars are absorbed, which is why if you are going to have sugar, having it from a whole fruit source is always going to be the better option than having it from something like dried fruit or fruit juice. The more you do to something that contains sugar, like a fruit, the faster your body is going to take that sugar, absorb it, and get that big spike in blood glucose and big spike in insulin as a result. So it was a brief question, but I do think I'm going to do videos soon talking more about this. So good question, Maxwell. Okay. It says, I don't like cheat meals. You cheat yourself. Just be consistent with good nutrition overall, and you can eat anything outside as you want to. If you're talking about like the idea of a cheat, I agree. I like the term treat better. But yeah, I would have to agree with that. Okay. Renee is asking, is it okay to follow OMAD as part of the treat meal? Meaning, can that one meal be the treat and don't eat the rest of the day? I would not recommend this. Here's why. Because depending on how you're doing that cheat or treat, you're probably already with OMAD with one meal a day. It's hard to get enough nutrients in for your body's needs, namely with the amount of protein because it is so satiating. So if you are just having that one meal as your treat, then you probably are replacing quite a lot of that protein that you're already having difficulties getting in at that one meal with something like sugar. That's going to have those really big effects on your storing hormone insulin because you aren't able to get enough of that protein to stabilize your blood glucose level and make you feel more satiated. I would recommend, if you are doing OMAD, have your meal. Have that meal that you know that you need to have to feel satiated, to support your body's needs, and then have the dessert. You know, it can all be in one sitting, so you can still treat it as OMAD, but have your meal that to get in your protein and then have that dessert. Oh, wow. Congratulations, Mariana. Been following you and finally lost stubborn 5 pounds, 10 more to go. Congratulations. That's amazing. Okay, I'm going to answer a couple more questions here, guys. So if you want to throw them in the chat. What can you do when you're feeling really tired and craving carbs? This is the time that you don't want to be having them because then you make it more of, and by saying carbs, I'm still using that like treat meal type protocol. I'm assuming that you mean something like pasta or sugar, something that isn't as supportive of your goals. But this is not the time to have a treat when you're feeling tired and when you're craving it, because this goes back to that. I think it was the first rule that we talked about. Making it scheduled. If you lean on the treat as something that's more of an emotional support system, it's going to become more of a habit, and it's going to start hindering your progress and making you not continue to not feel great because you're relying on these dopamine hits from the sugar and the starches to get you out of feeling tired or get you out of feeling less stressed. So depending on if you mean feeling really tired because you're stressed or feeling really tired because you're truly tired, I would first address, why is it that you're feeling tired? Are you feeling tired because you didn't get enough sleep? Let's address your sleep first, because that's what's more important. Then you won't even have to crave those foods the next day. In fact, this is something that I've talked last live stream about on how important it is to get the high quality deep sleep so that you don't have increased cortisol levels the next day, because poor quality sleep will increase your stress hormone levels the next day. Poor quality sleep will also make it so that your body is the next day more insulin resistant, because as cortisol goes up, the body's natural response is to have a little bit more of insulin resistance, making it harder to achieve a weight loss goal. But also hunger tends to go up. The hunger hormone ghrelin tends to go up after a poor night's sleep. So feeling tired, feeling more stressed, feeling hungrier the next day, that all is the result of getting poor sleep. So I would first address your sleep. I have so many strategies I've shared in the past, just even that last live stream alone, couple strategies that you can dive into there. But that would be a better way to approach this for the long term, so that these treats don't become more of a habit and something that you are leaning on as a crutch for those more emotional, stressful days that we all have. And instead, you can address the sleep portion that is much more important to actually help you achieve your goals. But hope that answers your question, Jackie. If you're feeling tired from the sleep aspect, definitely address your sleep. If you're feeling tired from the stress aspect of the day, I would look into things that actually are going to help decrease stress levels and make you feel better at the end of the day without having it to be that dopamine hit from sugar or from starches. For example, I like to go outside on a 5 or 10 minute walk with my dog and with my fiance. That, we've talked about how naturally just going outside and being in that more urban nature experience can help to decrease serum cortisol levels. There's actually been research around that. So you can have that decreased stress level and actually help to improve your sleep in the process by just taking that walk outside and doing that instead of having like ice cream at the end of the day. Great questions. Yadu is asking, if the protein powder you use has a small amount of stevia, is this a problem? I haven't found a whey protein isolate with 0 sweeteners. Stevia is definitely a better option. So if that's what you can find and it's a great option, that's much better than having regular cane sugar. Skills Money, how can we convince you to have live chats every single week? During challenges, I do. So that was a new thing this year. So definitely incorporating those. I don't know if I would have the bandwidth to incorporate more every single week, but definitely during challenges, I want to make sure that we can get these questions answered for you guys. All right, so Christina says, does Element, those electrolyte drink packets, break your fast? It doesn't have sugar, but it does have calories. I like to err on the side of safety and have the unflavored ones during the fast. And if I have them during the window, then I'll have the flavored one. So for those electrolytes, which if you guys have seen some of my later videos, you can test out for free. I have a link in one of my later videos. But that is something just to err on the side of safety. I like to go for the unflavored option if I'm having it during the fast. I just had a few treat days. Well, let's get some protein in you. Make sure we can help stabilize those blood glucose levels. Okay. Oh, wow. Yadi says, thank you for all the great information. I've learned so much from your advice. I've dropped from 268 to 177 and your advice was key. Thank you. Amazing. Congratulations. That's a huge accomplishment. I'm really, really proud of you, Yadu. Great job. Oh, Juliana's working out while she listens to us. Perfect. Okay, guys. So one last order of business here. Remember the 6-week summer meal plan. There's literally 1 week left and then it's gone forever. So make sure if you guys want to grab that and the new recipes and the treat meal structure, the PMS protocol, which also tells you what you can do during that week for your period to help with cravings. There's only 1 week left to grab this. So once you have it for life, but it is going to be gone after this week. So this whole live stream was taken from the actual treat meal protocol within the 6-week summer meal plan. So you guys can get an idea of what's in there and how it can help you. So if you guys want that, make sure you check it out. It is in the description down below and it's gone after a week. So a lot of A and Beeps have really been liking the various smoothies, the pancake recipe, the spicy bone broth chili, which is my favorite. Amazing. Definitely check that out. It's in the description down below. And other than that, guys, this is the last live stream for the Summer Intermittent Fasting Challenge. I will be announcing another sneaky little challenge coming up soon. Really excited about it. It's one I haven't done before in the past. So if you aren't signed up for my weekly newsletter, also check out in the description below as well. I'll be sharing all the details and information there. And it's going to be a free challenge coming up, a free 5-day challenge. So you don't want to miss it because it's some really cool stuff that I've been working on as a brand new challenge I've never done before. So thank you guys for tuning in. Cheers, Keto Coffee, cheers to the last week of the challenge. You guys have been doing amazing. I've been loving all your posts. Really great job, guys. And yeah, cheers, guys. We'll see you in the next live stream. Thanks for tuning in.